the German dative case and what does it impact? How do you use it correctly? What endings is it going to change? Does it change the word order? These are questions I'm going to answer in today's video. And this is video number 3 in my 4-part series about the German cases. I've done nominative and accusative already, so feel free to go back to those videos and get an idea of what the other cases are like. But today we're doing dative. And be sure to subscribe so that you catch the last video. Turn on those notifications as well. So what is the dative case? The short answer is that it is the indirect object of the sentence. But the dative case finds its way into many more things than just the sentence structure. And that's why we have this specialized term, dative, that doesn't really exist in English. Now, what does it impact other than sentence structure? There are 8 things that it changes. Now, the first one is word order, which, makes sense. So in German, you usually have the subject and the verb, and the indirect object tends to come right after the verb. So you could say, ich kaufe mir einen Hut. For example, I buy myself a hat. And so you would have indirect object and direct object. That's the order. And there's a lot of variations, but that's just one concrete example. It also impacts the definite article, which is a German equivalent of the. And it impacts the indefinite article, so the German version of a or an. It impacts adjective endings. So not only are you trying to figure out if it's masculine, feminine, or neuter, but you're also trying to figure out if it's nominative, accusative, dative. So as you can imagine, there are a lot of endings to memorize. Unlike the nominative and accusative, the dative can also impact noun endings, and we will get into that in a minute. It also impacts the pronoun type. So like I, you, they, he, she, it, that changes in the dative. And then we have reflexive verbs, which is a special kind of verb in German that always is paired with a pronoun. So it's kind of like saying, I, blah, 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 myself. He, blah, 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 himself. It's usually things that you do to yourself. Like I brush my teeth. So each of these reflexive verbs is either accusative or dative. So memorize that. And then the reflexive pronouns themselves are different from the regular pronouns. So again, there's a lot of triangulation, but once you get it, it makes German make so much sense. And finally, we have prepositions. There are prepositions that are specifically dative. And so if you see something inside of a prepositional phrase with a dative preposition, it's going to be dative for sure. So how do you know if something is dative? The first indicator is, could it be considered the indirect object of the sentence? That's pretty easy. Second, is it in a dative reflexive verb? If it is, it's dative. The third indicator is when it's in a prepositional phrase consisting of a dative preposition. So we're going to get into the details of what are these dative prepositions, what are the pronouns, what are the endings, so that you have a reference and you can memorize these. I'm also putting a study sheet below in the comments. So if you want to download that, you can refer back to it later. And this will help you to sound more fluent in German and also understand German text better, because they do use this when the word order is a little ambiguous. They use this to indicate, what's the indirect object, direct object, etc. So if you're just starting off and you're getting the endings wrong, don't worry about it as much. It's just important to speak and get some practice in, and people will understand if you're struggling at first. But if you're intermediate or advanced, you're still getting those endings wrong, it's a good time to go over them again, memorize them, and take it to the next level so you can get near native fluency. So if you're just starting out, you need a supportive place to practice German. I am starting a German immersion course this year that is self-guided, and I have a link in the comments below. If you want to sign up for my newsletter, I'll let you know when it launches. So we'll start with the dative definite articles. This is the German version of the. So first we have masculine dative, dem. Feminine dative, der. Neuter dative, dem. And plural dative, den. Now we have the indefinite articles. This is the German version of a or an. So the masculine dative is einem, feminine dative, einer, neuter dative, einem, and plural dative, keinen. Because you can't have a if there's multiples. Let's move on to adjective endings. There are 3 different types of dative adjective endings. There's just the standalone adjectives. There's adjectives preceded by definite articles, which are sometimes called der words. And then there's adjectives preceded by indefinite articles, like and. I'm going to use the adjective alt as my example. And so alt means old in German. So let's start with the standalone adjectives. Masculine dative is altem, feminine dative, alter, neuter dative, altem, and plural dative, alten. Now we have adjectives preceded by definite articles. Masculine dative is dem Alten, feminine dative der Alten, neuter dative dem Alten, and plural dative den Alten. Notice all of the adjectives end in en. So that makes the dative a little bit easier. Next up are adjectives preceded by indefinite articles. So we have masculine dative einem Alten, feminine dative einer Alten, neuter dative einem Alten, and plural dative einen Alten. Again, all of the adjectives are ending in en. Now the plural of these is a little different. You need all those adjective endings I just gave you and the articles the way I told you, but you also need to add an n or an en to the end of the noun. Why? I don't know. But you only do that to the noun if it does not already end in an N or an S. Now let's do pronouns, and there are 2 types of pronouns. There are regular pronouns and reflexive ones. So we'll start with the regular. First we have mir, which is for I. Dir for you informal. Ihnen for you formal. He and it are both ihm. She is ihr. We is uns. You guys informal is euch. And then sie meaning they is ihnen. Now the reflexive pronouns are much simpler because most of them are just sich across the board with a few exceptions. The exceptions are mir for I, dir for you informal, uns for we, euch for you informal, and that's it. And last but not least, we have dative prepositions, which are aus, außer, bei, mit, nach, seit, von, zu, gegenüber. So that's everything you need to know about the dative case. If you have questions, let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one. Tschüss!